Good evening, everyone, and welcome to what would have been January's NATS chat being held February 5th, 2023. I'm Kari Ragan, moderator of NATS chats, which are sponsored by Inside View Press. And I am so delighted to welcome my dear friend and colleague, Lynn Maxfield, tonight to co-host with me. And we are both thrilled to have Dr. Marco Guzman here tonight joining us. Thank you for being here. Such a wonderful topic, water bubbles, water resistant therapy, lots of things that this is called, and we'll talk about that later. But let me just take a minute for those who Dr. Guzman's work might be new to. He is a voice pathologist with 18 years of clinical and academic experience. He received his PhD in speech techniques and vocology from the Tampere University in Finland. He also holds a certification in vocology from the University of Iowa and National Center for Voice and Speech in the USA. Dr. Guzman joined the faculty at the Universidad de los Andes, Department of Communication Sciences and Disorders in 2018, following a 15-year academic career at the University of Chile. He also works as a clinician in the Department of Otolaryngology, 𝗚𝘂𝗲𝘀 Chile. So thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, Kari, and thank you so much, Lynn, for this invitation. So it's a huge pleasure to me to be here talking about water bubbles for voice. And thanks to all of the attendees tonight. So it's a great pleasure to be here, and I'll be happy to hear your questions at the end of this presentation. Hopefully we have a lot of questions tonight. So do you want me to share my screen, Kari?
Yes, please.
Okay. Perfect. So I did this before, but let me see if I can do it. And now I think this is it. Yeah.
You got it.
Okay, perfect. I was nervous, but now I got it. I think this is my presentation. Okay, could you please let me know when you see my full screen, please?
We see it. And now we see, yes.
Perfect. Okay, this is the full screen. So I need to minimize this. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm sorry. So the title of this presentation is "Water Bubbles for Voice." This is a beautiful video that I have that I want to show you. This is water bubbles for voice when performing WRT or water resistant therapy. As you can see, this is a slow motion video, and this is what is going on into the water when you are doing water resistant therapy. Later, I'm going to show you a comparison between different type of bubbles. So maybe you are not familiar with this, but not all bubbles are the same. We have different type of bubbles, and probably the effect is going to be different when comparing different type of bubbles. So when we talk about bubble for voice, we are really talking about water resistant therapy. That is a very well-known name for bubble for voice, water resistant therapy, or you can say tube submerged into the water. Why it is so important to talk about this topic, especially now? Well, there are so many reasons, but at least to me, one of the main reasons is because this is one of my main line of research with other semi-occluded vocal tract exercises, and not only WRT. But another very, very important reason is because of the huge amount of videos demonstrating how to perform WRT in social media, in YouTube, in TikTok, in Instagram, on Facebook. And that could be considered good, but the problem is that almost no one control any variables, and that could be a problem. Actually, you can get fatigue, vocally fatigue, if you don't know how to control the variable when performing WRT, especially if you are not controlling the depth of submersion. So for this reason, I think it's very important to be aware what are the main variables when performing WRT. So WRT is not just to put a tube into the water, but WRT, it is neither the treatment or the solution by itself. This is a very important point, because I have heard some singers or some people, and they think that WRT is a good solution for voice problem, and it is not. WRT is a good tool. It is just a good tool that we really need to learn how to use it and how to teach it. Okay. So as I mentioned before, WRT is just one type of SOBT, or semi-occluded vocal tract exercises. We have so many SOBT. WRT is just one of them. We have so many options. And WRT is probably one of the most used SOBT in the world currently. And it is also one of the most evidence-supported voice exercises. Actually, we have performed several studies, and we have several publications so far on WRT. So here you can see some of our photos from our studies that we have performed during the last 10 years on WRT and other SOBT using high-speed digital imaging, computerized tomography, flexible NATS endoscopy, rigid endoscopy with video stroboscopy, accelerometry, electrolithography, acoustic analysis, aerodynamic analysis, etc., etc., etc. So during my presentation, I'm going to show you some data from our WRT studies. We have some publication, as I just mentioned. So, but what is WRT? Well, it is a phonation into a tube which free end is submerged in a recipient filled with water, and several phonatory tasks can be performed, not only sustained pitch like this, but also you can change your vocal tract configuration from a regular configuration to a vertical configuration, for example, and you can feel a different sensory stimulation when you change the vocal tract configuration. You can perform loudness and pitch accent, glissandos, by spirals, messa di voce, song melody, prosody, etc., etc. And I know that you are so creative, so you can create so many different phonatory tasks when doing WRT. So we have three main options to perform WRT. This is probably the most classical one, to use a finished resonant glass tube. I have here a finished resonant glass tube. I don't know if you are able to see the glass tube because I don't see my face, but you are probably seeing my resonant glass tube. I took this tube from the Voice Research Laboratory from University of Tampere, and Dr. Anna Maria Laukkanen was my PhD advisor, and I took it when I was doing my PhD in Finland. So, but we have cheaper options. This is a flexible silicone or plastic tube. You can have a garden hose like this. This is a regular garden hose. You can cut it, you can have a 35-centimeter garden hose, and to put this garden hose into the bottle with water. Or you can also use a regular drinking straw, but we don't really recommend the regular drinking straw to perform WRT. I'm not saying that if you want to have a WRT device, drinking straw is not good, don't get me wrong. I'm saying that comparing to the garden hose or to the resonant tube, probably the drinking straw is not the best option. Later, I'm going to tell you why. We have some data regarding drinking straw with WRT. Okay, we have also several types of commercial devices available in the market. Probably this is the most well-known brand, Dr. Box, and you can see the Lax Box, the Dr. Box device, the Pocket Box, and also the Mass Box. I have no commercial relationship with Dr. Box. Also, you can have the Lax Box from Lax Box Institute. This is 𝗚cie 𝗀𝗁 from Germany. And also there is a guy, this is the guy from UK, Joshua. He is a singing teacher from UK, and he also sells vocal tubes. You also have this other option, which is the vocal fill, and it is a kind of WRT, but with this type of mask. So hopefully you are able to see my video now. This is the mask, and they put together the mask and a garden hose, and then a recipient filled with water, and they call it a vocal fill. Okay, but it is very important all the time to keep in mind, as I mentioned before, that WRT is not the treatment or the solution by itself. Why? Because we need to control variables, and one of the main variables that we need to control is the sensation that we should feel while performing WRT. So, of course, when we are doing WRT, we are expected to feel vibrations, but not the same type of vibration that you feel with a tube, with the free end in air. So when you use a tube with the free end in air, you feel vibrations like a cell phone vibration, like zzz, zzz, zzz. But when you are doing WRT, the type of vibration that you are feeling is not like the type of cell phone vibration, but the jacuzzi vibration. And this is very important because they are not only different vibrations, but also the place in your body where you feel the vibration is also different. Actually, when you are doing tube phonation with the free end in air, the place where usually you feel vibration is in this area, in the front part of your face and around your mouth and also in your head. But when you are doing WRT, the bubble vibration are usually not felt in the same area, but they are felt in the cheek and in the throat area. So it's very important to promote this vibration when you are teaching or when you are doing WRT. But not only the vibrations, but also the sensation of easy phonation. And this is, for me, the most important sensation that you need to promote when performing WRT. Actually, it is very nice to feel vibration, of course, because it is like a massage-like effect. We will be talking about the massage-like effect later. But the sensation of easy phonation is even more important. Why? Because as I mentioned before, I have seen so many videos in social media where people show WRT like this, using a lot of subglottic pressure, and of course that is not going to promote a healthy voice. So for that reason, it is very important to promote all the time the sensation of easy phonation. So the treatment is the effect produced by WRT and the way that we use and teach phonatory tasks producing a good sensory input. This is probably the most important slide of this presentation. So WRT, as I mentioned before, it is not the treatment, it is not the solution, but it is a very, very nice tool when we use it in a very good way, because it produces a good sensory input to, and you can use this sensory input as a vocal warm-up, or also to change your voice production pattern in long term. So there are two main differences between tube in air and in tube in water. The first one is the higher airflow resistance produced by WRT, and the second one is the water bubbling, which is attributed to the massage-like sensation. So let's talk a little bit about the higher airflow resistance when comparing tube with the free end in air and WRT. So when you have a tube or any SOBT, in general, we should expect to have an increased oral pressure. The oral pressure is the air pressure that we have in our vocal tract. And as a compensation, usually if we have a very, very high degree of airflow resistance, for example, if we compare tube in air and tube in water, tube in water produces higher degree of airflow resistance compared to tube in air. And in that case, we should expect a greater increase of oral pressure compared to tube in air. And this in turn is supposed to produce, as a compensatory behavior, an increment of the subglottic pressure, which could be good, but it is dependent on your goal. So if you want to produce an increment of your subglottic pressure, probably you should use a deeper degree of submersion. But if you want to produce just a little bit of subglottic pressure increment, maybe you should use only 1, 2, or 3 centimeters of submersion. And this is very important because you are not going to have an increment or a change on the subglottic pressure, but also on the transglottal pressure. And this is very important because transglottal pressure is going to impact the transglottal airflow, which is the driving force for vocal fold oscillation. And actually, this transglottal pressure is going to impact the degree of vocal fold impact stress. So for this reason, it's very, very relevant to control the depth of submersion. So deeper depth of submersion is going to produce probably a higher degree of vocal fold impact stress, and shallower depth of submersion is going to produce a lower degree of vocal fold impact stress. So for this reason, it's very important to control the depth of submersion. This is a very nice data from Radolf et al. Study published in 2014. And as you can see here, while they increment the degree of airflow resistance, for example, we have here a tube in air, very low degree of airflow resistance. Then we have a tube submerged 2 centimeters below the water surface, and then 10 centimeters. And you can see that not only the oral pressure increases, but also the subglottic pressure. So the higher the resistance, the higher is supposed to be the subglottic pressure and the oral pressure. Okay, why? This is why we need to control the depth of water when performing WRT, because we are going to impact the increment of oral pressure, which in turn is going to affect the degree of subglottic pressure and the degree of vocal fold impact stress. Does the amount of water matter? And the answer is no. No, no, no. Actually, there are two main variables that do not impact on the effect that water resistant therapy produces in voice. And one of them is the amount of water, and the other one is the shape of the recipient. So they don't really have an impact, a real impact on the effect that WRT has on voice. Actually, this is a formula. You don't have to memorize this formula, but pressure is equal to the depth of water times the density of water, which is constant, and the gravitational field strength, which is also constant. So the only variable that is affecting the pressure during WRT is the depth of water. I'm going to show you, this is what really matters. The distance between the water surface and the end of the tube. This is the variable that we really need to control when performing WRT. So it is about the same if you want to perform 2 centimeter WRT in a glass of water, or 2 centimeter WRT in an aquarium, or 2 centimeter WRT on a pool. So it doesn't really matter the amount of water that you are using when performing WRT. But keep in mind this, if you decide to leave the end of the tube touching the bottom of the bottle, please consider this detail. So we don't really recommend a 90-degree free end of the tube because it can be blocked on the bottom of the bottle, and that can increase the airflow resistance, which is not good because you are not controlling that. So you may want to use a 45 centimeter angle in the free end of the tube, because if you use a 45 centimeter angle, you avoid this blocking at the end of the tube, or you can use a zigzag shape to produce exactly the same effect. So changes in water resistance can affect vocal fold adduction, as I mentioned before. We published this paper about 7 years ago, and the title was, "Do different semi-occluded vocal exercises affect vocal fold adduction differently in subjects diagnosed with hyperfunctional dysphonia?" We also included a control group with normal voice. And as you can see here, we have several SOVT, and those which promote less vocal fold contact are actually lip trills and tongue trills. And WRT usually promote a higher degree of vocal fold impact stress, but this is also dependent on the phonatory task and the vocal intensity that you are performing. So keep in mind that. But in general term, when you use, for example, 10 centimeter WRT, that is going to produce a higher degree or a greater vocal fold contact compared to a shallower degree of submersion, for example, 3 centimeter WRT. So in this experiment that we did with Dr. Anna-Maria Laukkanen and Dr. Matthias Eckermann in Freiburg University in Germany several years ago. It was a high-speed digital imaging study. We wanted to assess the effect of WRT on vocal fold vibration, and also to observe a possible differential effect when depth of submersion is modified. And as you can see here, we are measuring the different depth of submersion when performing WRT. This was the experimental setting that we used for this study. And we processed all the high-speed digital imaging samples with phonovibrograms. And we concluded that depth of submersion affects glottal function. So this is very important to keep in mind. So if you want to perform WRT, you need to control the depth of submersion, and at the same time, you need to control the sensation that you are feeling, especially the sensation of easy phonation that as I mentioned before, according to my experience, that is probably the most important sensation that you need to control when performing WRT. So yeah, in general term, deeper immersion should benefit subject with hyperfunctional pattern. I'm on hyperfunctional pattern, and shallower immersion should benefit subject with hyperfunctional pattern, because we already know that the depth of submersion has an impact on the vocal fold impact stress. Okay, now let's take a look on the second difference when comparing tube in-air and WRT, which is the water bubbling, water bubbles for voice, as the title of this presentation. This water bubbles for voice is attributed to the massage, to the so-called massage-like sensation. So actually, WRT is one type of double source of vibration, SOBT, where the first source of vibration is the vocal fold oscillation, and the second source of vibration is actually the water bubbles. We can also find in this same group, the group of SOBT with a secondary source of vibration, tongue trills, lip trills, and raspberry. But also, I don't know if you are familiar with this, we can have actually dry bubbles for voice. I know this sounds funny, because what is dry bubbles for voice? Well, I'm going to show you. They are not really bubble for voice, but I said to my patient, this is like a kind of dry bubble for voice. This is a device called 𝗚𝗂𝗀𝗁 choice device. We also have another device, which is the 𝗚𝗂𝗀𝗁 blue. There is no water inside at all. I don't know if you are familiar with these devices. So the 𝗚𝗂𝗀𝗁 choice was not created originally for voice purposes, but this is a device to remove mucus from the airway. So to mobilize secretion from the airway by fast backward and forward movement of small volumes. And this technique is used in respiratory physiotherapy practice. But I think in 2019, if I am not mistaken, so before telling that, I'm going to show you the different part that you can find in the 𝗚𝗂𝗀𝗁 choice device. This is the mouthpiece, this is the oscillatory valve, and this dial that you have here on the distal end, you can actually change the airflow resistance. So you have 5 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 1 being the lowest airflow resistance, and the 5 being the higher degree of airflow resistance. So this could be equivalent when you change the depth of submersion when performing WRT. Yeah, it was in 2019. 𝗚cie𝗽𝗁𝗁 et al. Published the very first paper with 𝗚𝗂𝗁𝗁, and they compare the oscillatory oral pressure pattern when performing WRT and phonation with 𝗚𝗂𝗁𝗁. And they found larger amplitude of vibration with 𝗚𝗂𝗁𝗁 than water bubbling, and also a more regular oscillation. As you can see here in blue color, we have the oral pressure oscillation for 𝗚𝗂𝗁𝗁, and in red color, the oral pressure oscillation for water bubbles. So please don't get me wrong. I am not saying that 𝗚𝗂𝗁𝗁 is better than WRT. This is just data, but we need to know how to use it. There is another device called the 𝗚cie𝗀𝗁 Deluxe or the 𝗚cie𝗀𝗁 Medic Plus, which can also be considered a secondary source of vibration SOBT to produce those kind of dry bubbles for voice. Actually, I said to my patient that when you are performing WRT, you not only have water bubbles inside, but also you have air bubbles inside your vocal tract. So the same can be explained for these devices. This is a very nice paper by Dr. Anna-Maria Laukkanen and colleagues, and they found that if you use this device, the shaker, in an horizontal position, the airflow resistance is similar to the airflow resistance produced by 5 centimeter WRT. But if you use a 45 centimeter angle with this device, the airflow resistance is similar to 10 centimeter of water WRT. And this is very important data because you can control the airflow resistance, which is going to impact as a compensatory behavior in the increment of subglottic pressure, which in turn is going to affect the degree of vocal fold impact stress. So what happened during WRT with bubbles? Here we have the oscillatory oral pressure, and these peaks are the subglottic pressure peak, and these small peaks is the oscillatory oral pressure that can be observed during the WRT. This pulsative oral pressure is supposed to move pharyngeal and laryngeal and oral tissues, which are supposed to produce the massage-like sensation, which in turn is supposed to produce a reduction of the sensation of muscle tension and vocal fatigue and vocal effort. But we really need to question if this really happened. That's why I said all the time it's supposed to, because if we have no data, this is just an assumption. Even though we feel the sensation of tissue oscillation, we need to prove that. So there is evidence supporting the fact that when performing WRT, we have an oscillatory oral pressure. Actually, in this paper that we published in 2015, we demonstrated that there is an oscillatory oral pressure, and as you can see here in these images. And also in this paper by 𝗚RMI et al., Dr. Anna-Maria Laukkanen was involved in this study. They also demonstrated the same degree of oscillatory oral pressure when performing WRT. But the next question is the oscillation of oral pressure during bubble able to move tissues? Well, let's take a look. Usually, people who use the water bubble for voice or WRT, they report that they feel vibration like bubble vibration in the pharynx area, in the larynx area, in the oral cavity, specifically in the cheek, and also in the chest, some of them. In several years ago, we did a collaboration with Dr. Matthias Echternach from Freiburg University. He is now working in Munich. He's not longer in Freiburg. And we did a functional MRI study to observe some degree of tissue oscillation when performing WRT. And we actually observe oscillation not only in the larynx area, but also in the oral cavity tissue and also in the pharynx area. Okay, I'm going to show you, as I said to Karen before this presentation, this is a very nice video. This is a functional MRI video from our study. And as you can see, the vibration of tissues when performing WRT. So this is no longer an assumption. We have data demonstrating that when we are doing WRT, our tissues are moving. And later, we perform an accelerometry study. We place 4 accelerometers. Accelerometers are a kind of sensors to detect oscillation. In this study, skin oscillation or acceleration. We place this accelerometer in 4 body regions, in the cheeks, in the pharynx level, in the larynx level, and also in the chest level. And as you can see here, we have a participant performing phonation with a cappella choice device, which is this device, and also WRT. We did a comparison, and we also included other secondary source of vibration SOBT, such as raspberry, lip trills, and tongue trills. This is the experimental setting that we use for this study. And this is so beautiful. I don't know if you find this beautiful, but I find this so beautiful. You can see a modulation of the accelerometer signal on the oral cavity, in the pharynx, and also in the larynx. So this is a very nice data demonstrating that when performing this type of secondary source of vibration SOBT, including WRT, we actually have oscillation of our tissue. So the same happened with a cappella and tongue trill and lip trill. So I have just a few minutes. I'm not going to show you this data because I promise that I'm going to use just 20-25 minutes for my presentation. So I'm just want to show you this graph. This figure is a very important one. So as I mentioned before, for me, the sensory input is probably one of the most important aspects that we need to control when doing WRT or any other SOBT. We did not only measure objective measurement from the accelerometer in our study, but also we require all our participants to say the degree of vibration or massage-like sensation that they were feeling when performing this SOBT. And as you can see here, the a cappella show the greatest degree of massage-like sensation. And then the WRT group, I said the WRT group because we use 4 types of WRT, changing the depth of submersion and also changing the tube diameter, the tube inner diameter. And also we can see here the lip trill and tongue trill. So in the first place, was a cappella choice, and then the WRT group, then the lip trill, and then the tongue trill. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that a cappella is better than WRT. This is just data, okay? Objective data. Yeah, Kari.
Yes, I know you can't.
Yeah, I am running out.
You're doing
running
great.
out of time.
Keep going. This is fantastic. If you, yep.
Really? So you're not getting bored?
Oh my God, are you kidding? I'm enthralled, as I'm sure everybody.
Okay.
So we definitely want to save
Okay.
time for questions, Marco, but please feel free to make your points. Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Just 5 more minutes. Promise you, 5 more minutes.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay. And our results are very pretty much in line with the 𝗧cie𝗀𝗁 et al. Results data. So recall that 𝗧cie𝗀𝗁 did not measure the tissue oscillation, but they measured the oral pressure oscillation. But it's very nice to compare our tissue oscillation study with the 𝗧cie𝗀𝗁 oral pressure oscillation study, because they're pretty much in line. So actually what they found was that when performing this kind of dry bubbles with a cappella, they observed a larger amplitude of oral pressure oscillation compared to WRT, and we found larger amplitude of tissue oscillation with a cappella compared to WRT, which makes sense, right? Okay, and there's also another very nice study by Dr. 𝗂𝘂𝗲, and they use high-speed digital imaging and video chemiography to analyze these high-speed digital imaging samples, and they found not only oscillation on the vocal tract tissues, but also on the vocal fold tissues. So the next question, we know so far that when performing WRT, we have oral pressure oscillation, right? And we know that this oral pressure oscillation is really able to move tissues, which is very important. But what about the evidence related to the massage-like sensation caused by bubbling, water bubbles? So in this study published in 2017, we assess objective and subjective data. I love subjective data, even though objective data is very important. But in clinic, in real clinic, subjective data is very, very important, because that is what we have when we are treating patient or when we are training a student with this type of exercises. So we measure the self-perceived resonant voice quality and the self-perceived muscle relaxation sensation in our participants. We use WRT, lip trills, tongue trills, and raspberries, all of them considered a secondary source of vibration, SOVT. And as you can see here in the pre-session, so I mean before teaching these exercises, they said that they did not feel too much resonant voice quality, nor too much resonant perception of muscle relaxation. And after half an hour of exercising, they felt an increment of both resonant voice quality and perception of muscle relaxation, which remain after 1 week of practice. So very nice data. And also they were asked to self-assess the degree of vocal tract discomfort by using the vocal tract discomfort scale protocols. And we found a significant decrease of the vocal tract discomfort after 1 week of practice. So just 2 more minutes I have. Let's keep talking more about water bubbles. So as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, not all water bubbles are identical. So I know this sounds very crazy, but there are some crazy people, including me, trying to assess the type of bubble and the effect that they could have on voice. So this is a very nice paper by 𝗚𝘂𝗲𝗀 from Sweden, and published in 2017. And they found that we can have at least 3 types of water bubbles when performing WRT. The regular one, the bimodal bubbles, which is also called the mushroom-like bubbles. It is beautiful, right? This is a mushroom. It's a perfect mushroom.
Super
so
cool.
yeah, it's very, very cool. And they also found a chaotic bubbling, and these type of bubbles are dependent on the airflow rate. Actually, you can observe that in real life. You don't need to be a researcher to observe this. But if you, for example, use just a little of subglottic pressure, you are able to count bubbles. Pa, 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 pa. Can you hear this?
Yes.
That is because I am using just a little subglottic pressure, and of course the airflow rate is very low. But if I increase the subglottic pressure, probably that are the mushroom-like bubbles. But if I increase a little bit more my subglottic pressure, probably you can see chaotic bubbles. So should we control variables that affect bubbling to get better massage-like sensation? Yeah, actually there are at least 3 types of water bubbles variables: the bubbling frequency, the bubbling amplitude, and the bubbling irregularity. And they could impact oral pressure oscillation and also the massage-like effect that we felt when we feel when performing WRT. So this 𝗚𝘂𝗲𝗀 et al. Study was a modeling study, and they found that increased airflow rate produced higher bubbling frequency, and larger back volume resembling the vocal tract produced a lower bubbling frequency and greater bubbling volume, like this. What is a larger back volume? Is when you change from a regular vocal tract configuration to a more vertical, like when you're Johnny. There is a greater general vocal tract volume when you are doing this, and you can actually hear a lower bubbling frequency when you do that. So we did something very similar, but in real human subject. So I am running out of time. This is the last data. The last data. This is true. So I'm going to skip all the information about the method. We compare. I need to show this because this is very important. I always people ask me, so does the tube diameter matter when performing WRT? And we think yes, it matters. Why? Because when you change the tube diameter, you change the type of bubbles, and this is what I'm going to show you. Oh yeah, I'm going to finish with this video. This is the bubbles, and you can see the mushroom there. Can you see the mushrooms? Perfect mushroom. This is the bubbles when you are doing WRT with a regular drinking straw. Small bubbles are very fast bubbles. But when you do WRT with a very typical garden hose, the bubbles are bigger and larger, and also slower. So the frequency, the bubble frequency is lower. And when you and what about when doing WRT with a bigger tube? This is a 2 centimeter inner diameter tube, so the bubbles are also bigger and even slower. So does this have an effect on the massage-like sensation? We think that yes, actually our data show that this change has an effect on voice. Okay, this is my last slide. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Let's see if I can stop this.
On
okay.
The upper right in that go to.
I'm doing my best. So be patient, please.
Great.
I did it.
Yay!
Good.
Now,
I did it.
Oh, thank you. My goodness. I'm sure everybody is clapping. That was a remarkable presentation, and I'm sorry I can tell there was much more to share, and I'm mostly grateful it was recorded so that there was lots to dissect there. So anyway, thank you so much. We have questions in the chat box already, and I know Lynn and I are taking notes, so I'm going to yield to my colleague for a moment to initiate some questions.
Thanks, Kari, and thank you, Dr. Guzman. Really excellent presentation, and as is hallmark of a really great presenter as you are, and a great scientist as you are, every time I wrote down a little question, you answered it a few slides later. You're doing so you set us up.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's perfect. It's perfect. That's exactly, it was wonderful to get all of those things. But I did want to touch on something that, and maybe this is a little bit out of your wheelhouse, but you mentioned, you said you can either use these as a vocal warm-up or to change your vocal behavior in the long term. And I wonder if you wanted to talk for just a second about how you see those two interacting. What's the difference between a warm-up exercise and something that's going to change your behavior over time?
Oh yeah. Warm-up by itself is not going to change your sensory motor memory. Warm-up is good, and it is important because if you do WRT right before performing, you're going to feel your voice easier, lighter, with a different placement, and that's good because probably you are going to promote a more economic voice production. But I didn't show this data, but we measured several years ago with Dr. Mattias Eckernach and Dr. Anna-Mena Laukkanen that this effect lasts about 5 to 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if there are more data regarding that, but we made, and yeah, there is another paper with a straw phonation by the Wisconsin Voice Research Group, and they measure about the same time. I think they published a paper in Journal of Voice. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, and they measure and they measure the phonation threshold pressure, which is the minimum subaortic pressure to phonate, and I think they found 5 to 10 minutes. For that reason, you don't have to only promote the warm-up effect, but if you want to change your sensory motor memory, which is a lot more important than the warm-up effect, you should repeat these exercises as many times as you can during the day, during the 7 days a week during your whole life.
That's right. Yeah. So it becomes down to a matter of repetition rate and an absolute value of number of times that you do this.
Actually, as you say, repetition is the key word.
Yeah.
You need to repeat. And if you use negative practice, as Dr. Kari Bertolini said, negative practice. Yeah, it's also a very nice strategy to teach your brain how to use your voice.
Let's take just a second because the question box is just loaded. I've never seen it quite like this. So I'll do my best to try and work through, but I'm sure a bunch of them are about the straw itself. I used to go to the hardware store and get the tubing, and I would cut it at gosh, now I don't remember, 10 to 13. Gosh, I don't remember now. I think 11 inches. But then I found these boba tea straws on Amazon. You can get them a pack of 5 or 8 for under $10. And I am loving the simplicity of them and that my singers can get them. So we're having lots of questions about easy way to get tubes. I'm sure you answer this question all the time, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So if I am not mistaken, that tube has around 1 centimeter in diameter, right? Yeah, it's about 1 centimeter. Yeah. According to our data, if you really want to feel very evident massage-like sensation, you should use at least 1 centimeter inner diameter. So if you use less than 1 centimeter diameter, your sensation probably is going to be smaller compared to a bigger tube. But one important detail, Kari, I don't know if you have problem with that tube because that tube is rigid. It is not flexible. So if you want to use a bottle with water, I really recommend you a flexible tube because of your body position.
Yes, getting the alignment.
Yeah. If you have a rigid one, or some people, what people do is like to change the bottle angle.
Yeah.
But that is not good because you are changing the depth of submersion.
Yes.
So I mean, I am not saying that you cannot use rigid tube. You can use rigid tube, but not with a bottle, because the opening is so small. So if you have a glass with water, that could be perfect. But if you want to use a bottle with water, my recommendation is a flexible tube because of the body position.
We have a couple of related questions that are similar there. Talking about that inner diameter of the tube that you're using, have you seen any evidence yet that would support changing that diameter based on either body shape and size of the individual or voice part, high voice versus low voice, or anything like that?
No, not really.
Yeah, at this point, the evidence it sort of functions the same regardless of the vocal apparatus.
Yeah. Good research question.
Yeah, really good question. Yeah. So is bigger better? Is one of the later questions here, and so that comes back to what you had one of your last slides there, looking at the big green hose or green tube with the very large bubbles. Is there a point of diminishing return where you don't want much bigger bubbles and slower bubbles, but there's a sweet spot in there, right, with that 1 centimeter tube?
Yeah, but I'm sorry, I didn't get the question, Lynn.
The question is, can we assume that if the 1 centimeter tube is better than a drinking straw, would a 2 centimeter straw tube be better than a 1 centimeter tube?
I'm not sure. I'm sure that the 1 centimeter tube is better than the 0.5 centimeter tube, but I'm not sure if the 2 centimeter tube is always better than the 1 centimeter tube. For that reason, we recommend at least 1 centimeter tube. Yeah, I mean, actually, we found that the 2 centimeter tube produced a larger degree of massage-like sensation, but it is not always easy to find that 2 centimeter tube. And also, if you want to use that tube in a bottle, you are not going to find at least a 3 centimeter bottle opening. That would be a little bit more difficult.
So there are some practical issues with a larger tube. But I think that, you know, first of all, I love a scientist who's willing to say, I'm not sure. And I appreciate that. I also appreciate that you're bringing it back to the perceptual data, or the subjective data of the client report. And while they're reporting more massage-like sensation, does that correlate with a increased sensation of resonant voice?
Yeah, we did not perform a correlation study, so I don't know that for sure.
I'm looking at new ideas for you and I to collaborate, maybe.
Sure, I would love to collaborate with you, Lynn.
And I want to just say, I was looking up, 3 centimeter is 1.18 inch, just for people that are more familiar. And also on your data, there was a 10 centimeter, which is equivalent to 3.93 inches, if my quick search.
Yeah, thank you, Kari. Yeah. In science, we use centimeter, and yeah.
Yeah, it just will help people. Somebody has asked to review or expand on the discussion of deep immersion by hypofunctional patterns and shallow for hyperfunctional. Can you just review that really quickly for us?
Yeah, sure. So actually, we have some data showing that, but this is pretty obvious in clinic. So, for example, if you have people with a very pressed phonation or with phonotraumatic lesion in the vocal fold, that is because they have a very high degree of vocal fold impact stress. So you don't want to promote a higher degree of vocal fold impact stress, right? For that reason, my recommendation is not to use a very high degree of airflow resistant exercises. I mean, if you want to use tubes, for example, you can use tube in air, or in the case, if you want to use WRT, maybe you can use just 1 or 2 centimeter depth of submersion, because the data show that the deeper is the depth of submersion, the greater is the vocal fold impact stress. So on the other side, if you have, for example, I don't know, elderly people with presbyphonia or elderly choir, with some of them with presbyphonia, you should expect a lower degree of vocal fold impact stress. And what you want to promote is a more vocal fold contact. In that reason, maybe you can use a deeper depth of submersion when performing WRT. But please keep in mind this. This is not just to put a tube into the water with 10 centimeter. Maybe your goal in that population could be 8, 7 or 10 centimeter, but you need to increase gradually the depth of submersion. So if you have, for example, a person with presbyphonia or with a lower degree of vocal fold adduction for any reason, if you recommend a 10 centimeter at the first time, probably they are going to compensate in a bad way. For that reason, your final goal could be 5, 6, 10, or 8 centimeter, but you need to increase that gradually.
Lynn, should we just, with our time, maybe I'm trying to look through, I'm sure let me do one and then I'll let you do one. How's that sound?
That sounds great. Yeah.
Okay. Is it possible?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I need to plug my computer. Just give me 2 seconds. Okay?
Yes, we have.
Go right ahead. Better that than have you disappear.
That's right.
Yeah, I do apologize. As I was asking my first question, the question panel here blew up. There were so many more questions that came in as I was asking my first one. So
It's
I
fantastic.
apologize to all of you that we're not going to get to everything here, but
Okay. Okay,
So
I'm back. Thank you.
We're glad you're plugged in. Colin Johnson asks, is it possible to regulate back pressure with the 𝗚𝘂𝗲𝗀 device, like increasing and decreasing depth in the water resistance?
Yeah, back pressure is the same as oral pressure. For those who are not familiar with this term, back pressure is exactly the same as the air pressure that we have in our vocal tract. And you can regulate the back pressure when using a cappella by changing the degree of airflow resistance. There is a dial here. If you use the number 1, lower degree of airflow resistance, you should expect a low degree of back pressure. But if you use the number 5, a very high degree of airflow resistance and higher degree of back pressure.
Thank you.
great. And I have a question here from Dr. 𝗚𝘂𝗀𝗁, who asks, Marco, is there a resonance effect, larger bubbles or greater oral pressure variation when the bubbling rate is a sub-integer multiple of FO?
Oh, hi, Ron.
Hi, Ron. The same
Yeah,
thing.
hi, Ron. Oh, yeah, it's great to have you here. So, a question from Ron Scherer are always very challenging for me. So I have to be honest, Ron. I don't know. I don't really know. So, but we can measure that. Yeah.
Well, and a sub-integer multiple of the fundamental frequency, that would be an interesting study if we could control the bubble rate that precisely.
Yeah, could be another collaboration.
Yeah, I actually have one more that I wanted to touch on if I could. There was one person who asked, they've been working with a woman with vocal tremor and she wonders if you see any benefit to water resistant therapy in that population.
Well, that is a neurologic disease. No, really. Yeah, not too much, really. Yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to, in my experience, it's not going to relieve the tremor as much. What you may see is a little bit of stabilizing the phonation during non-tremor periods.
Yeah, but I mean, WRT is not going to solve the problem at all in that cases, unfortunately. Yeah.
But it's one of those cases, if it feels good, do it. But yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah.
Thank you.
And actually, let's ask from Sandy in that, what about working on a volume with Parkinson's in terms of sensory feedback?
Volume, water volume?
Oh,
or volume?
Loudness.
Loudness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, probably we all know that 𝗚𝘂𝗀𝗃 voice therapy is the gold standard for Parkinson's disease. But if you treat, I have treated patients with Parkinson's disease with this type of exercises, and I think WRT promote pretty much the same goal of LSBT, which is speak loud. I mean, when you speak loud, you are increasing your subglottic pressure, and we have seen that when performing WRT in an elderly population, which is not the same as Parkinson's disease population, but they have similar vocal characteristic. We have observed that when they perform WRT with 10 centimeter or 8 centimeter of water, immediately after performing that, they usually increase the vocal loudness, the intensity, and the vocal fold adduction. So based on those data, we can assume that maybe a program, therapeutic program with WRT could be good for Parkinson's population, but we need to prove that.
Yeah, so essentially at those depths, it may be acting similar to a respiratory training device.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But with phonation.
With phonation, right?
Yeah, with phonation. Yeah.
Very cool.
And several questions about voice fatigue since we're in the the vocal health kind of section of potential voice disorders. Just some let's see. Yeah. Do you recommend doing WRT for singers with voice fatigue? There were a few I saw. So if you would like to.
Yeah, my recommendation, if they feel vocal fatigue very oftenly, they need to go to the doctor first. So my recommendation is not going to be use WRT. My recommendation is go to the doctor and to see if you have anything you are vocal for, or if it is just a functional dysphonia or just a vocal fatigue sensation. Then you need to go to the voice pathologist and to get a right treatment. That would be my recommendation.
There are a couple more questions down toward the end here about coming back to the sensory input that you're coming back to with the patients. And so if you could choose one that was really important, what sensory feedback would you really like to have the patient or client increase if you could choose one that you really wanted to maximize?
Sensation of easy phonation, for sure. That's the most important sensory input, easy phonation. And easy phonation, even though if easy phonation is a subjective sensation, it has a very, very important relationship with objective measurement, such as the phonation threshold pressure, the subglottic pressure that you are using, the vocal economy, etc.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that. And if we talk about the massage-like effect, what do we think is the benefit of a massage-like effect? And were those questions asked such that massage was a positive term? Were you asked if they felt good from the massage-like effect, or how was that question posed?
Yeah, I mean the massage-like effect it's good, but you need to feel the easy phonation at the same time that when you are feeling the massage-like sensation. For example, if I do this, I feel the massage-like sensation, but this is not easy for me. So for that reason, the easy phonation is the most important sensation that you need to feel when performing WRT. But of course, massage-like sensation is good, for sure.
Fantastic. I love that.
So we've had a couple questions about the dosing or frequency. Any thoughts about, how long a duration for a session should be? You said frequently throughout the day, but do you have any sense of 2 minutes is beneficial or?
Yeah, well, I can respond that question based on my personal experience because there is no data regarding that, unfortunately.
Okay.
So there are so many studies regarding vocal warm-up, and we don't have so far very clear conclusions regarding vocal warm-up. So all of them report that vocal warm-up is good, but we still don't know why it is good. I mean, data from objective measurement. But based on my personal opinion, I think it is good to practice several times a day, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day during 5 to 10 minutes. Even for some people, 3 minutes could be okay.
Thank you. Lynn, I'll pose this one because it's to both of you from Ron Scherer again. It would be great to see similar studies with water treated with surfactant to I should have glasses on, to increase the surface tension of the bubbles and therefore perhaps the size of the bubbles and the air pressure to produce them.
Yeah. Another collaboration.
Yeah, that would be fun.
I'm hearing 4 or 5 new articles down the pike from the 3 of you.
Thank you, Ron, for your ideas. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I think we've covered the big ones, Lynn, unless you see one other that you would like to get to or something you would like to ask. We'll give you the final.
Hey, there's always more. I think that we could continue on asking questions all evening.
Yeah, such a really, truly, Dr. Guzman, a remarkable presentation. And I am so grateful for your work on this. It's a tool that I love and use and have written about. And so I actually, there's lots more data I can tell that is coming down the pike. And has come down the pike. So we really appreciate both the objective and subjective information tonight. So thank you very much for joining us. And Lynn, thank you so much for being my sidekick tonight.
A true pleasure.
I want to remind everyone, well, first of all, there was a question, all NATS chats are recorded and they all live on the YouTube channel. OfficialNATS YouTube, just type in NATS chat, Marco Guzman, give me 48 hours, and wonderful people at the NATS headquarters will get that uploaded. You can join our Facebook page, NATS chat group for teachers, and it will be posted there as well. And our next NATS chat is just 2 weeks away on February 19th, called Embodied Thought, Movement to Free the Voice. And it will feature Frank Ragsdale, Matthew Hoch, Elizabeth Blades, and 𝗚𝘂𝗲 𝗂𝘁. So I hope you will join us for another wonderful NATS chat in 2 weeks. And with that, thank you all for joining us tonight. And I hope to see you again soon. Thank you again, Dr. Guzman.
Bye-bye, Lynn. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.